Hey everybody!
Lauren Bassolini here from the Monmouth Ocean Ed Services Commission in Tinton Falls, New Jersey. Welcome to session 3, which is workshop number 14. Just a reminder, if you'd like to tweet along with us, use the hashtag the Ed Collab Gathering #14. Now I'd like to turn over to Kristen Zemke, who's going to introduce our presenters.
Awesome. Hey everybody, thanks for hanging out with us today at the Ed Collab Gathering, a fun, free day of virtual PD in your pajamas. This afternoon, I would like to introduce my dear friend, Lisa Eickholdt, author of Learning from Classmates. Lisa is a primary grade teacher in Georgia who has now moved into pre-service teacher education and does some amazing things with young learners around the areas of literacy. Today, we're super lucky to hear her talk a little bit more about her book and about using student writing as mentor texts. So I'm going to turn it over to Lisa. This is session 4. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Kristen. I appreciate it. So I'm honored to have Kristen introduce me. I'm a big fan of hers. I've heard her described as thebomb.com. So I have to second that. And if you don't have her new book, she has a book with Katie, and it's Amplify. If you don't have it, you need to run, don't walk, go grab it. It's a great resource for you. But thank you so much for the great introduction, and I'm really honored and excited to be here. And I am going to introduce my co-presenter. I am presenting here today with Denise Schweikart. Denise was a second grade teacher that I met last year in South Carolina when I was doing some work. I asked for a great writing workshop teacher, and her name was the first to cross my desk. And so I worked a lot with her last year. And then when I found out about the Ed Collab Gathering, I said, hey, we can't end our time together. Come work with me one more time. And she was crazy enough and nice enough to say she would. So this is Denise Schweikart. She's now a literacy coach in South Carolina. Do you want to say hey to the people, Denise?
Hey, I just want to say thanks for allowing me the opportunity to be here today, and I am very honored and privileged to get to present with Lisa. She's an awesome writer and mentor for me myself, so I'm very excited to hear what all she has to say too. So let's get started.
Yeah, we're going to get started because we have a lot to cover. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you. And I want to share it with you and show you a couple of things that are going to be important to you in a minute here. So this is our session. It's Every Child a Mentor. And what I want to bring to your attention are a couple of things. So one, you'll see the hashtag gathering. We're number 14. We really, really want you to tweet. And you also see my handle and Denise's handle, our Twitter handle. And those are going to be important to you because of this. My wonderful publishing company, Heinemann, has offered to give away 2 free books. So you are really going to want to know our hashtag, and you're going to want to follow Denise and I for a chance to win those 2 books. And we will come on after the session, and we'll randomly pick people who've tweeted. So I wanted to show you those things. So you're going to want to know the hashtag and follow us if you can. So I'm going to go ahead and get started real quick. So I feel like I always like to start my sessions with telling people that for years I think we've used mentor text in our writing, and we've used the 2 that you saw on the slide a second ago, children's literature, and we've used our own writing. And we still need to do that. So I always like to start by saying nobody would ever tell you not to use those kind of mentor texts. You must write in front of your students. When you write in front of your students, they see you write. You have an instant mentor text, an instant demonstration text it's sometimes called, for your mini lessons. And it also helps you when your kids are going through the same process as your children. So if they are writing an essay and you're writing an essay, and there's a time where there's a difficulty, when you're working through that, that helps you say, hey, when I get stuck and I'm writing my essay, this is helpful to me. So it gives you things to help them with. It helps you troubleshoot. The other one is, of course, children's literature, which we owe it to our kids to give them and read to them the most beautiful children's literature, and there's just so much out there right now. So certainly, please keep doing those two kinds of demonstration texts or mentor texts. The point that I'm trying to make and that we're trying to make today is that there's this third kind of mentor text, great writing from students, that until now has kind of been underutilized, I think. So that's what the point of today is. We're going to talk about utilizing kids' writing and why we should do that and why it's powerful. So whenever I teach kids or whenever I work with teachers, I tell them there's three things that we have to teach, right? We have to tell kids in a mini lesson or in a conference or small group work. One, we have to say what we're teaching them, right? Two, we have to tell them why we're teaching them it. And then we have to show them how. So we know what we're doing. We're going to try to make every child a mentor, right? But why? Like, why is this really important? So I think there's really three reasons why it's important to make every child a mentor. One, it's really, really engaging. You will have no higher engagement than when you use a piece of kids' mentor text in your mini lesson. The kids are deeply engaged and excited. Two, it's the most developmentally appropriate text out there. So it is fabulous to share a piece of writing by Cynthia Rylant, and please do. And some kids can get to Cynthia Rylant's level, but many won't. So the bridge between Cynthia Rylant and your other kids' writing is great writing by a peer. So it's developmentally appropriate. And then the third most important reason, I think, is because it increases self-esteem. The student who's made a mentor for the rest is so excited. I have spent my career, I now teach college students, but I've spent my career, I was 22 years as a public school teacher. I spent my career working with kids who struggle, developing writers, students who avoid writing, and I can tell you that this changes lives, and that's really why I wrote the book. Making a student a mentor can make them stop hating to write, and that's really what our goal is. So I want to kind of illustrate that point with a video clip, and Lauren's going to cue that up. If you want to cue that up, I'm going to set it up a little bit while Lauren gets that ready for us. So this is a video clip that was taken about 5 years ago in a first grade teacher's class at my former school where I was a literacy coach. And I was invited in to work with this first grade teacher. She said that her students needed a little help with their small moments or their personal narratives. We examined the writing and we pulled up all their folders and assessed. And what we saw was they had focus, which is the first thing I always look for. Their pieces were focused. However, they were not elaborating. They were writing very sparse stories. So I want you to watch this clip. This is a clip of Christina and her teacher, Dana. Dana is going to hand over Christina her text and ask her to teach the rest of the class how she added inside story, which is the first elaboration technique we were teaching them. So students want to tell you what's happening to them, and if they can tell you their reaction to what's happening, it adds a lot to a piece, right? Inside story, inner story. And we just started with simple, like, tell me what you're thinking or feeling. So I just want you to watch, because I think it just illustrates how excited and how motivating this is for kids. So you want to go ahead and show that for us, Lauren?
In those hours, I enjoyed it just because of Courtney. Courtney was a great skater, like I was. So you see how she added that inside story, and we kept hearing about how Christina liked skating with Courtney. She added that inside story. Similarly, that she's going to share what she thinks.
It's called The Time Courtney and me first skated together. One day at 12 o'clock in the afternoon, I met up with Courtney at skate country to skate with her. I was nervous if Courtney was going to fall a lot and make me faster. We were very excited to skate together for the first time, so Courtney popped on her skates and headed to the hard floors. We were doing awesome, and both of us only fell 2 times. I thought I was giving Courtney a good hand. We were getting the hang of it. Me and Courtney skated for over 4 hours. And those hours, I enjoyed it just because of Courtney. Courtney was a great skater like I was.
Tell them what you did, Christina.
First, I wrote the story, drew the pictures, and I wrote the story, and I put it in the after I was done reading it and making sure it was perfect and just good enough for people to understand it, I did that because I wanted a lot of people to understand that I love skating with Courtney. And so I added my thoughts and feelings, and it made this story way better than it was before. And when I added the sticky notes, I thought that people would understand it more because of the
You hear what Courtney's saying? Courtney, you hear what Christina's saying?
She said, the story was already really good, but I thought I could make it a lot better if I told them, as the author, I told them my thoughts and feelings about what was going on. And that always makes your story that much better.
So I love that clip because to me, like we showed you the beginning where the teacher was handing it over to her, and I just think like she's about to jump out of her seat. She's so thrilled to have the teacher use her piece as a mentor text, and then I just love how clearly she tells exactly what she did and how she added the sticky notes, and it was just, to me, that's why we do it, right? Like that excitement, that enthusiasm is really, really important and can change writers' lives. So let's talk some more about that. So let's talk about, we know what we're doing, we know how, why we're doing it. Now we want to talk about the how. So I think the very first step in how to make every child in your room a mentor is you have to believe it. Like, you have to believe every kid can do this work. And I'm here to tell you, as someone who's spent her life as an interventionist primarily, they can. And so you have to start with believing. I think well, actually, this is really the message of the book. This is a beautiful quote that Heinemann put out, and really it's my message for the whole book, and that I hope everyone, if they just take this one thing away from this session and from my book, is every child has something worthy to offer. It's our job to seek it out. And I truly, truly know that and believe that with my heart. But so we know we have to believe it, but how can we how can we really set this in motion? And it starts with this idea I think Robert Probst had of stop being a hunter of errors. So sometimes I believe what happens is we look at our kids' writing and we don't see the beauty. We start by seeing the surface feature errors. We see the messy handwriting. We see the missing punctuation, the misspellings, the grammatical errors. And when you do that, when you become a hunter of errors, you miss the beauty that's hidden in their content, the hidden gems, as Catherine Baumler calls them. And so I think that's the first step in how you make every kid a mentor. And I think, Denise, you wanted to add something to that?
Yeah, as a teacher in a classroom, I think it's really important for us to remember that when they're writing, our first instincts as an adult is to go, oh my gosh, they don't have a capital letter, or oh, there's a period missing, or look at how horrible the handwriting is. You know, we really need to fix that. But I think as a teacher and an educator and thinking about the writing process, focus on thinking about how can I look at exactly what the child is expressing through their writing. Because we know as an educator that writing is a self-expression for those children. And one way to do this is to just think for about a month that you're going to say, okay, when I look at my children's writing, I'm not going to think about punctuation. I'm not going to think about handwriting. I'm not going to look at spacing. I'm going to look at what my children do well. How is their story told? Because a lot of the children, when you read their writing, the stories they tell are true stories that have happened to them. So those are the stories you need as an adult to teach those children and push them even further It's the content that's in that story. So we need to really focus on the content and development of the story versus looking at the handwriting, the periods, the punctuation, the capital letters. Yeah, you will teach it, but it shouldn't be your main thing that you teach, because it's harder for a child to develop a story than it is to put a period. So I like to think of it when I'm working with my kids, I like to say, okay, for a month, I'm not going to focus on any of that stuff. I'm going to look at their stories and focus on how to make them improve that story. You know, how to bring out those inner things that are going on in the story, not just where to put a period. So
Right.
I think as a teacher, how we can focus on
Yeah,
that.
so I like what you said. You take a month, take a month hiatus. If you're really trying to get past being the hunter of errors and looking into their content, take a month off, right? And just say, I'm only for the next month gonna focus on the content of their piece. So let's practice this.
Right.
So if you know me at all, I always like to throw up kids' work. So we're going to throw up a piece of work. It's a first grader's piece. I'm going to throw it up. I'll read it to you. What we want you to do is invite you to tweet using our hashtag. The hashtag will be on the slide in a second. And this is a first grade piece. I'm going to go ahead and share it with you, and then I'll set it up a little bit for you. So this is a first grade piece. I was in a first grade classroom several years ago, and we were doing some text-based debate. So we read the book Frog and Toad, the Island, and we had the kids verbally debate with partners. They caucused, they went through and did all that great work. And then at the end, we asked them to write about it. So this is a first grader's response to the Frog and Toad Island piece, and I want you to notice and name. Let's practice looking at the great content. What great things do you notice in this first grader's piece? And I notice a lot, so I think you will too. So I'll read it, and then we'll talk about that. I think Toad is a good friend. I think this because he was trying to be nice, because he brought sandwiches and iced tea. He was bored and wanted to play with him. He did not know he felt happy. Some people say he is a bad friend, but with me, he is a good friend. I love that picture too. So look at this. Think, what's really great about this? What if this was your child? How could you make this child a mentor for the others? What great things did he do? So I'm going to come off, so you're not just looking at that. Hopefully you had time to look at it. And Lauren is going to go ahead and put that up for us, or tweet that out for us. I think we may have, did we lose Lauren, Denise?
No, I'm here.
Oh, you're here. There. All right, there it is. Were you able to tweet it out? Okay, good. So go ahead and see what you notice, and then Lauren's going to tell me some of the tweets that she sees you, and we'll talk about what great things. So you guys may need to look at Twitter. I'll pull that back up again and share it with you, and then let's talk about what were some cool things you guys noticed that if this was your child, how could you make this child a mentor for the rest? Let's look at that again. Lauren, do you have any?
Yep, I have. Some are starting to come in right now. I do have one. Abby is saying, I like how he stated his opinion.
Great. So yeah, I think that's exactly a great point. We teach kids to start with their opinion. I think Toad is a good friend. Right. So he starts by telling us, boom, this is what I think. Later, this is a first grader, later we teach them to start with that, and that's called their thesis statement, right? So the work we do with very young children eventually makes its way to our older students. Great. What else do we have? Great. I see Carrie said making a student's mentor text can make them stop writing. So a comment about what's going on? Yeah, exactly. I agree. He names and has examples to prove his thinking. Hey, Julianne. Yeah, exactly. He does name, here's what I think, right? And he said he did this because. Here's all the reasons why I think he is a good friend. Good. Another comment, students tell us their stories and we need those stories to teach them. I agree with Denise on that one, so we have some great comments. Some of the other things that I noticed in that piece were, again, he said his opinion and then he supports it with details from the text. So I thought that was amazing for a first grade writer to do that. And he's kind of at the end there, he's leading into a counter argument. You know, some people think that he is a bad friend, but for me, he is a good friend. Good. Julianne says he names it as examples. Yeah, lots of great things this child did. But do you see how if we look past the surface feature, we find all kinds of great things the kid did. He had evidence for his opinions. That's through high school. I still teach this in college. If you're going to say something, support it with evidence, right? I teach this to my college students all the time. Hey, Fran said he stated his opinions, supported ideas with a story, right? That's text-based debate. That's huge, you know, Common Core work. What does the story tell you now? Look for the evidence in the story. Gives details, explains ideas, and shows understanding of the content. Very good. You guys are seeing a lot of great things. I love it. Great. All right, so let's go ahead. We're going to move on to how we can, other ways we can make students mentors. So other ways, you know, one, we have to stop looking at the surface features errors. That's one way we make students mentors. The next is we need to use the whole writing process and the whole writing workshop to do that. In my book, I really am hitting a do it in the mini lesson, but there's certainly other times, and I think Denise wants to talk to that point a little bit. Denise?
Yeah, one thing I wanted to bring out is that using a student's mentor text doesn't just have to happen during the workshop. Another time that you can use a student's mentor text would be during your immersion. Your immersion is going to happen right before your nonfiction unit. You're going to have a time there before you start the nonfiction unit where you immerse the children in the actual writing of nonfiction. Say it could be, like Lisa said, books from different authors, but it also could be students' writings. I like to take writings each year. I save some of my children's writings. I make photocopies and I save them for the next year. So when we start a new unit, I can use examples from my students from the previous year of their writing. So we're actually in the classroom I'm working in this year, it's the second grade classroom. We're going to be starting nonfiction in about 2 weeks. So before we start the unit, I'm going to pull out old nonfiction pieces written by other students and actually show those to the children, read those to the children, give them examples from previous students, because it gives them the mindset that I can do that. I see that another child has done it, I can do it too. So it just gives them the self-confidence that they can do it themselves. Another time that you can use it after you have started would be during your mid-workshop teaching point. We know those are so critical in the writing workshop to stop those children. And I like to actually showcase a student during my mid-workshop teaching point. And generally I find those as I'm doing my conferring with other students. And I see something that a student's done well. So I stop all my other children and I'm like, look, let me share with you what so-and-so's doing in their writing today. Because it not only brings that child up who actually wrote the piece, wow, she's actually excited about something I wrote, but it also shows the other children in the classroom that a friend of theirs wrote it and has developed it, so I can try that too. Another thing I like to do with mentor texts from students is use it in conferring. Conferring is a time where you're sitting one-on-one with a student, and if you have one student that you've taken their writing and you said, do you mind if I use this piece to share with others? It's self-pride that their writing means something. And that's what you want all children to do. So as I do today with my children or through the workshop time, I like to look for pieces that I might want to just borrow from them and say, can I make a copy of that and use it? Because the children thrive on that. It kind of makes them feel like they have ownership in your classroom, they have ownership in the writing that's going on in the classroom, and they have ownership in helping their friends. They like to help each other, and if you can use their writing as a tool to be that, then that's what needs to happen. And another place that I like to use it in my writing workshop would be during my share, which comes at the end of my workshop time. I usually look for somebody that content or development that they are working on in their writing has really improved, or they've tried something that we talked about in the mini lesson, or they've tried something that I want everybody else to try. So I kind of pump them up and make them think, oh, this is awesome, you know, she's going to share my writing, and we make a big deal out of it. Because that's the only way we're going to get children to want to write more, is for them to see themselves as a writer. When you make that child into a writer and they see themselves as that writer, they are more apt to want them to try. When you're doing your mini lessons, they're like, yeah, I can do that. I'm going to try that today because I want her to show my piece. So it just gives them that ability and makes them really improve their self-esteem about their writing and themselves as a whole. So that's 4 different places that during your writing that you could take a child's mentor text and add those in.
Yeah,
okay,
and I
Lisa,
think,
back to you.
And I think you bring up a great point, the whole self-esteem. And what I love, and one thing I really think we must do, is we have to choose writing from our most developing writers and students who avoid writing the most. I target them first. So like Denise said, it makes them feel like a writer. When we do that with them, when we say, hey, can you come sit up here and help me teach the mini lesson? We use it in the mid-workshop teaching point, as Denise suggested, or in immersion before you start writing. All those places, in the share, up on charts, that is really very motivating to those struggling writers, and that's who I seek out first. And it really can change their lives. I've watched writers or students who avoid writing stop avoiding writing once I've used their writing as a mentor text. And I think you have a really good story you wanted to share about that, Denise, didn't you?
Yeah, I want to share. I was actually in a classroom. I was a 2nd grade teacher, and I had 25 beautiful children that I adore, and I had one. Her name is Julie. She was an ELL student. She was very reluctant about writing. She was very shy. She never wanted to really, in a group, she would definitely not speak. So one day I decided I'm going to get her. So I found a piece of writing that she did really well in her folder, and I decided I was going to blow it up on a big poster maker, and we made a big poster out of it. And I did ask her permission before we did it, because I was like, do you mind if I share this? And she was like, no, that's fine. So I agreed to let me share it, because normally she's just, I don't want anybody to see me, I don't want anybody to hear me, anything.
Very shy.
So, yeah, very shy. So once I blew it up on the poster maker, she would not stand there with me while we talked about it during our writing workshop, and I used it as our mentor. That was just pushing her a little much, but she did let me use it. And the whole time we were talking about it as a class, we were reading it, we were pointing out, we were putting Post-it notes on it, things we noticed, things we wanted to try. Her face, the whole ear to ear, because I didn't leave her name on it, so the kids were like, who wrote this? Who wrote this? You know, and so just to see her smile about writing, which normally she avoided, was worth everything we went through to get that piece. and I actually ran into her last week because I was back at my old school, and she was so happy to see me, and she was like, "Do you remember the time?" And so she starts telling me about the time that I actually did this with her. And I asked her, I said, "So tell me," I said, "how does that make you?" And she was so excited because she thought I actually felt like I was a writer. She said, "I felt like I had my own book, that children were reading my book." And, you know, for her, she's ELL, she speaks English, but it's not her first language. She's reluctant. She didn't want to write. She was very shy, never wanted to be in front of people. And for her to say felt like an accomplished writer, I felt like we had fought a battle and won. And I even asked her, I said, "So how's writing going for you this year?" And she said, "I'm the best writer in the class." And yeah, I felt so happy for her because I felt like she really feels like she is a real writer. And I thought, you know, every child needs to experience that because I've seen so many that are so just, "I don't want to write." So that's why I think it's just so powerful to use their writing.
I agree.
Just for them and for them to.
Yeah, I've had similar experience when I was getting ready to publish a book. It had been like 5 years, and I contacted the student that's in the opening chapter and asked if I could use her writing in the book, and she could still remember, and her mother could remember. We happened to have entered it in a local writing contest, and her mother could still remember her doing that. So I think when you can go back 5 years to a kid and they still remember things, I think it really tells you a lot. So here's up on the screen, I have some quotes from students of all ages. These are some of the responses that I get when I've shared students writing as mentor text, and you can see even my college students, I do this with my college students now, and they love it. They get it, they feel very validated, and it makes them want to write. I give them a copy of an A paper when they're writing papers for me, and those mentor texts are extremely valuable. So we're going to practice this again. I want to try this with a 5th grade piece this time, and I want you to, again, look at the content. What wonderful things in this opening scene do you notice, and can you notice a name, and how could you make this child a mentor if she were in your classroom? So I'm just going to read it. While I'm reading it, if you'll tweet again, I would love it, and we'll come back to that. So this is her opening scene from a narrative where she was at a big water park with her brother. I walked up to the big bowl water slide. My brother said, "I want to ride that." "Oh no, if he wants to ride it, I have to ride it now," I said to myself. We got in the line. What if I fall off? What if I drown? Will anyone save me? I said in my mind. My brother said, "It looks so much fun." Yeah, I said. Not really, I thought in my head. We got closer and closer. I was as stiff as a board, and my hands were very, very shaky. So I think there's a lot of great things in this opening scene. And again, I'm going to leave it up here for a second, and then Lauren's going to tweet it out a couple times for us. So I want you to do some tweeting, and then we'll talk about what you noticed, which is the key to all this work. But one thing I noticed, even the end there, where she's showing me, not telling me how she was feeling, right? I was as stiff as a board, and my hands were very, very shaky. So show, not tell at the very end, which is one thing we teach students, right? And I think the easiest way to start show, not tell is to start with feelings. So the students can do that kind of show, not tell most easily first. So what other things are you noticing about that piece? What great things, how could you make that child a mentor if she were in your classroom? Let's see if Lauren can throw up a few tweets. We'll give you a minute, and we'll talk about those. I could look at my Twitter, but I'm afraid it'll distract me if I look at it. Lauren, do you have a few comments? Oh, Lauren muted.
Okay, I'm going to read a couple as they're coming through the stream.
Yeah, that'd be great.
A little, because it's a little slow. But I do see Rebecca saying the story starts right in the middle of the action.
Yeah, it does. She doesn't teach kids to not start like driving to the place. Start close. She's starting she's in line to go. So that's great. Good.
There's another. I like how the writer uses lots of inner story.
Right. The whole thing where the whole thing is very inner story, right? And that's the key. We talked about that with you saw that with our first video clip. That's one of the keys to making narratives good is don't just tell us what's happening, tell us your reaction to what's happening. Yeah, I agree. That's great. What else? Maybe one or two more before we move on.
Yeah. The internal dialogue is strong. Love the questions to herself. That one's from Ashley.
Yeah, she does the 3 questions, which I thought was particularly strong, where she says, what if I will fall off? What if, will anyone save me? She does 3 in a row. So the power of 3 is there, and that internal dialogue is very strong, which I really like. So I think there's a lot that we could teach from that piece, and I think you all saw a lot in it. So great. Very good.
Oh, wait, here's some more. Hang on.
Okay. Internal dialogue, I love that. Yeah, the talking. Inner thoughts. So there's so many. Yeah, great. Showing, not telling, dialogue, inner thoughts and feelings. And if you weave, in narratives, effective use of figurative language, great, Debbie. Good. In narratives, we'll teach kids to weave between action, thinking, talking. I think you see that in there. The talking's to herself, but that counts, and I still like it. And I love when it's heavy on the inner story. Yeah, so a lot of great things when we look past surface features, when we look into the content. So I have a couple more tips for you about how to make every child a mentor. And I'm just going to go through them kind of quick because I think we're going to need to get to some questions and answers in just a second. So one way you can make sure every child is a mentor is to use your conference time. And Denise alluded to that, right? So I tell teachers, and what I do is that's when I make most students mentors, is I seek out their writing when I'm conferring. So it's like I have a double lens when I confer. So I'm looking at the individual student and thinking, how can I help this child? But then I'm also thinking, what is this child doing that I might be able to bring to the rest of the group? So there's really only 3 things we teach in a conference. We reteach something from a previous mini lesson. We teach a child something totally new because that's what they need, and they're showing us that's what they're ready for. Or we troubleshoot. All 3 of those can make great mini lessons, can be great ways to make students mentors for everyone else. Is whatever they're doing, you can find a way to show it to the rest. The other tip I have for you to make every child a mentor is to be flexible. So, we all have, many of us work off the units of study, and we have our lessons set up about how they're going to go. But I think it's really important that we remain flexible, that we remain open to those teachable moments where we say, oh, I had planned to teach this, but boy, I just saw Denise do this, and this is really, really important, and my kids could, need to learn this. Let me make Denise the mentor and teach everybody that now. Often the being flexible for me is I've planned on teaching some of these things and the kid does it first. So maybe I've planned to do it down the road a bit. You kind of plan your units of study and think of some of the things you'll teach. But the kid shows me, oh, well, Denise is doing it now. I think, why don't we go ahead and just teach it to him now? And sometimes they teach me things, like they do something totally new, and I'm like, wow, I don't even know what to call that. Let's figure out a name for it and teach everyone else that. So be flexible is another tip I have for you. Remain open to those teachable moments because they're just everywhere all the time. The other tip I have for you is, it's really not a tip, it's just a comment, and that is that this kind of work, making every student a mentor, isn't just for young kids. We have K-5 on the session, primarily because we're sharing 1st and 5th grade work, but it isn't just for young students. You saw up there, and I told you earlier, that I use this with my college students all the time, and they get a big kick out of it, and will say to me, oh, I'm so excited that you made me a mentor for everyone else. But it's just not just for young students. It can be used with anyone. So I'm going to pull up on the screen. This is a 3 teachers talk. This is Amy Rasmussen's blog, and I met Amy the other day through Twitter, of course. We were both on the same chat together, and she has a great blog post, and I'll tweet it out after the session, where she talks about how she uses student mentor text and how she realized to use it with her high school students, and how great that went. So I'll tweet that out after, but she has a great blog post where she talks about using a student's writing, and she had her students introduce themselves using one sentence. And there's she has pictures of 2 beautiful mentor texts up there, mentor sentences, that you really need to see. I mean, the work is just very, very impressive. So she's got a great blog. You should follow her, and she did that work. And I think we maybe need to take some questions, Lauren. Are we ready for that?
Just about.
Okay.
Don't forget to remind them about the
Yeah, we're gonna. All right, while
resource.
Lauren's getting the questions, let me show you. I want to show you a great resource for you that you can find more of. Denise, there she is. So this is Denise. This is the Clemson website. Again, we can tweet this link out. It's probably easier to be linked, but if you want to, it's a great website if you're trying to teach teachers, train teachers how to do writing workshop. And there are lots of videos on there, lots of student work, charts, pictures, a ton of pictures from Denise's class, lots of great stuff on there that you are going to probably want to check out. So that's a great link, and we will tweet that out after the session.
Okay, I do have a question here.
Okay.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I hear you great.
What is the best way to get parents involved in this process at home?
What is the best way to get parents involved in this process at home?
Yeah, so how can they copy what you're doing in class at home?
How can they copy what you're doing in class at home? I think that I've always felt like the thing with parents is the whole idea of that content is more important than the conventions. That's always been the thing I think parents need to be taught the most. They seem to think, temporary spelling, they don't really understand what that is. They are more concerned with, the punctuation and the correct spelling, and they're afraid they're going to learn it wrong. So I think if we get parents to understand that the content is the hard thing to teach. Like, I can teach a kid to put a period pretty quick and pretty easy, plus they're going to have Word, and it's going to help them do those things as they get older. Teaching kids to make great content is really, really difficult. Most students and most people don't know how to do that. So I think that's kind of the parent thing we need to, that's always been what I've found that we need to teach. Denise, do you have anything that you want to add to that? Or do you think that's kind of what it is too?
A great opportunity to do this would be like if you have a parent PTO night, instead of doing the traditional just come in and meet the greet, the teacher, you may want to just do like a quick thing with the parents, have them sit down, bring out a student writing and say, let's talk about this and what we noticed that's really great. Let them become the classroom for a minute, and let them experience how to look at their child's writing without focusing on those conventions, because they're adults, that's the first thing they want to see, and they're like, oh my gosh, they don't put periods at their sentences.
Yeah.
So really just have student writing and showing them how. A lot of parents will do it, they just don't understand how to look at it and what to look for. So I think that's one thing as a teacher we really need to focus on, is teaching our parents how to look at their children's writing and how to focus on that.
Yeah, the content over the conventions. You're right. They don't get that because most of us were never taught, right? We were only corrected as young writers, right, which is sad. Right. And Lauren, you have one more question, I think?
Yeah, there's one more question. Let's turn that back on. Yeah, this is from Monica. She wants to know, conferring with a double lens, how can I help the child and how can the child help others?
Yeah, so again, your conferences always have to meet the kid where they are, right? So it's not like in a mini lesson I teach leads and then I go and teach leads to everybody. That's not effective, right? It has to be whatever the child's ready for. So I just think the idea, if you know that whatever a child does Either even if you're reteaching something from a previous mini lesson, teaching them something totally new, or troubleshooting, I just kind of in the back of my mind think, okay, is this something they could help me bring to the group? How could this child be a mentor for the others and teach them either something new, help me reteach what I taught in a mini lesson, right, some idea, or maybe if they're having trouble, possibly is it the rest of the group is having trouble as well. So sometimes that's a red flag for me if I'm troubleshooting. I bet a lot of other kids are having this issue. So let's bring that to the table as a group and talk about it. So I think that's what the double lens kind of is. Does that make sense? I hope.
Lisa,
yes.
can I add to that?
Yes, please.
One thing I did as a classroom teacher is when I was in that conference with a student, you do your research first while you're sitting there looking at their writing and you're talking to them about their writing, is I always try to come up with 3 things that they're really doing well, and I write that down because that's a way that I can go back later if I'm at the mid-workshop teaching point and I can say, oh yeah, Julie across the room was doing really great with leads and I want to focus on that right now to get somebody else started on them. I would run quick. So I worked with her on what she needed, which was not leads, but I know that I can use that piece later on if somebody else does need help with leads. So I think it's when you're looking and you're doing your research during your conference time that you're thinking, what is this child doing well, and not just one thing that they're doing well that I might could use. So that's kind of how I worked it into my conference with students.
Yeah, and I think that's the point, is it's not another thing to do. You're already doing the work. It's just a little shift in the lens, right, that you're looking and you're starting to look for things.
Yeah.
All right, I just want to share this. I have another PD opportunity for you. This will be Wednesday, and I'll again tweet this out after we're done here, the link. But I would love to see you there again. We're going to be talking about how to leverage your students' writing. So now that you know how to make every child a mentor, we're going to talk about how to leverage their writing and use it in your work each day with students. So I hope I'll see some of you there. Denise and I are going to stay on after and do some tweeting and look for our 2 winners. Remember, there's 2 books we're going to give away. And thank you so very much for letting us be here today. We are really, really honored. Thank you, Denise, for joining me.
Thank you, Lisa. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, and
yeah,
thank you,
it was
Lauren.
a great time. Thanks.
Thank you, Lauren, for helping us, and Kristen Zemke for introducing us. And I think Lauren's going to tell you about some next sessions, so I hope you'll stay tuned. It's a great day, and thanks again for having us.
Thank you, everyone, for joining session 3. I know I had a great time chatting along with all of you and learning from both Lisa and Denise in this session. I just want to remind you of our upcoming workshops for session 4. Workshop number 15, we have Jennifer Cervallo talking about reading strategies. In 16, Trudy Ludwig and Joellen McCarthy are going to talk about helping kids to be kinder and more compassionate. In workshop 17, Lindsay Moses, connecting language literacy in the natural world with young English learners, and Renee Hauser and Aaron Donaldson are going to talk about the power of strategic partnerships. So thanks again.
Thank you all. We appreciate it. Bye. Great sessions. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Have fun. We'll be on Twitter.